Brain chemistry is important because it's so difficult to overcome the influence of chemicals on our emotions. In fact, it might be true that chemicals are our emotions. Let's examine some of the primary chemicals that shape our moods, attitudes, and our good and bad feelings. Dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good brain chemical that is energizing and satisfying. The expectation of reward triggers dopamine in the mammalian brain and releases the energy needed to reach the rewards. When a lion approaches a gazelle, her dopamine surges and the energy she needs for the hunt is released. Dopamine motivates you to seek, whether you're seeking a college degree, a mate, or a parking lot near the donut shop. That's the problem, evolutionarily. Dopamine was made to alert your attention to things that met your needs, to survive and thrive, which had a positive effect on us. Since survival in a natural world has largely been replaced with artificial and abstract temptations, it has become easier to live a life motivated by entertainment and indulgences, conveniences and comforts. We can develop dependencies by habits of getting our dopamine from stimulants like coffee and sugar, which pump us up with artificial energy and at a terrible cost, essentially brain damage. We have to take action steps to come by our dopamine honestly, building brain health and a strong dopamine factory. What to do? First, we need to get specific about our purpose in life. Don't know your purpose? It's easy. Make it up. Write down what you think it is. And make it a lifelong project to fine-tune your statement of purpose as it changes, as you mature, and as you think about it over time. A good place to start is the cultivation of health, love, joy, and peace in your life, service to others, learning, growing, and becoming a more conscious human being. Whatever it is for you, be as specific as you can, describing what your purpose-driven life looks like. Review it regularly, and feel free to edit whenever you're so moved. Anchoring to your life's purpose not only brings more meaning to daily life, which puts destructive, unhealthy behavior into perspective, but it also motivates you to set goals. And goals, like catching the gazelle, will produce lots of homegrown dopamine for you, which gives you the vim and vigor. Then get to work. Start thinking of your little daily activities as goals. Write them down. Make lots of goals that might interest you, specifically being sure to add healthy ones and check them off each day anytime they're attained. Repetition will build a new dopamine pathway until it's big enough to compete with a dopamine habit that you're better off without. Serotonin. Serotonin feels good and is triggered by confidence. Monkeys try to one-up each other because it stimulates serotonin. People often do the same. As much as you may dislike the idea, you enjoy the good feeling of serotonin when you feel respected by others. Your brain seeks more of that feeling by repeating behaviors that triggered it in your past. The respect you got in your youth paved neural pathways that tell your brain how to get serotonin today. The old patterns of behavior, with their serotonin reward, we discover, do not always serve our highest good. Conformity, overly accommodating behavior, people-pleasing, and performance-based self-esteem often obstruct our truest and best self. Identify your externally derived sources of serotonin and think creatively how you can get them a different way. We want to evolve and mature past those behaviors. With intention, we can build internally derived self-worth and confidence. Again, through the technology of affirmations and goals, a conscious method of self-design. Find something, anything, and become competent at it. And acknowledge the things that you're already competent at. You will strengthen your serotonin. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is a feel-good chemical and naturally enhances a sense of optimism. We feel safe. Trust triggers oxytocin. Reptiles cannot stand the company of other reptiles, so it's not surprising that they only release oxytocin during sex. Mammals stick with a herd because they inherited a brain that releases oxytocin when they do, because social bonds help mammals protect their youngs from predators. And natural selection built a brain that rewards us with a good feeling when we strengthen those bonds. When our trust is betrayed, it paves a neural pathway which tells us to withhold trust. But to the degree we withhold trust is the degree that we are deprived of oxytocin. We can stimulate oxytocin by building trust consciously. We can accomplish this by finding the courage to be vulnerable with others. Have a vulnerability meeting with a friend or even a group, and be sure you communicate that your intention is courageous sharing and trust. Request that they support your sharing without judgment, criticism, or analysis, or even advice. Find good listeners. Share your humanity, your faults, mistakes, your bad and negative thoughts. While this might not seem to be a big ego booster, it's an honest and clean act in which you find out that you really are okay afterwards. Surprisingly, you'll feel great because your internal oxytocin factory will be working overtime. So what are we trusting in ourselves and others? Practice modifying expectations. When negative emotions come up, identify them and investigate. See if you have a story that creates that feeling and expectations that reinforce the story. Write them down and see if you can modify them. Create a list of new expectations that are more realistic. Reinforce them by adding these new expectations of yourself and others in a daily affirmation list, and read them every day in your planner or journal. While it may sound cliché, the most potent action steps toward balanced, healthy brain chemistry is exercising, eating well, and stop doing drugs. We have to get off all drugs. They're all bad for us. We'll review the scientific literature for the most widespread drug misuses. Caffeine is a psychoactive drug influencing brain chemistry. Its chemical name is 1,3,7-trimethylxanthine, and it looks like this. As long ago as 1900, in the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, reported on coffee as a beverage, its deleterious effects on the nervous system, at which the contributor complained that most physicians had given the subject little, if any, attention. A study supported by the Swiss National Science Foundation found that caffeine impairs deep sleep and causes delayed brain development. The medical journal Clinical Psychology reports that this psychoactive drug alters behavior and detrimentally affects memory. From the journal Neuroscience, caffeine depletes dopamine production and is connected to psychosis. Neuroscience and Behavioral Reviews publishes a study that reveals caffeine as an addictive reinforcing agent, actively influencing the prefrontal cortex. 4 caffeine-related disorders exist in psychiatry's diagnostic coding. This study links caffeine to psychoses, anxiety disorders, sleep disorders, and schizophrenia. Neuropsychopharmacology reports that caffeine causes altered brain chemistry and even gene damage. The archives of general chemistry show caffeine involved in anxiety disorders, panic disorders, social phobia, and panic attacks. Refined white sugar is a drug, a man-made chemical that does not exist in nature. Medical journals indict white sugar as addictive and altering the limbic system of the brain. There are numerous ways that white sugar causes disease and altered brain chemistry. Not all of them are surely known. One of the best known, as explained at wikipedia.com and reported in the medical journal Neuroscience, is sugar's depleting brain-derived neurotropic factor, or BDNF, which is vital for memory, higher thinking, and survival of brain neurons. In the journal Diabetologia, white sugar damages our ability to regulate blood sugar and is implicated in hypoglycemia, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes. Trends in Neuroscience report of white sugar's damaging effects on the brain chemical BDNF and is linked with depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's disease, and Rett syndrome. Schizophrenia and white sugar are definitively linked. And white sugar is clearly linked to clinical depression and anxiety. Let's review this. Caffeine, sleep disorder, reduced dopamine, abnormal brain development, memory impairment, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, neuron death, and eating disorders, and addiction. Sugar, metabolic disorders, reduced BDNF, diabetes, depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, anxiety, and addiction. This is your brain. This is your brain on sugar and caffeine, to one degree or another. Other drugs have similar effects on brain chemistry, and remember that all the effects aren't even known. But we know for certain this. Pushed, prescribed, or peddled at the local cafe, drugs do not belong in our body. We have to work to live free of them, independent and strong. When is chemical dependency ever anything but bad? To sum it up in very unscientific terms, drugs make our brains go wacky and dizzy from going up and down. Drugs poison the system and deplete our ability to make good, healthy chemicals that lead to peaceful and joyful life. We are designed to live a peaceful, joyful life, and all we have to do is return to our natural state with natural foods, with natural chemicals, and go out and get some natural exercise. We were made to eat right, to walk and dance and move. Get back to the basics, and you'll be amazed at how your life becomes beautiful and vigorous.